Shefaza, thanks for doing this. My name is Martin de Groot. I volunteered to help with this project. And the way it works is that we're asking each candidate the same 6 questions. And the first question is, all 8 of our municipal governments have committed to the Transform Waterloo Region strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2050, with a 50% reduction by 2030. How will you, as a local representative, help our communities and businesses achieve this goal?
That's an excellent question. Thank you, Martin, for having me here. So as a local representative of the Green Party Ontario has a vision for achieving climate net zero. And there is a roadmap that specifies a lot of those things. And it so turns out that Waterloo Region is one of those progressive areas that are doing a lot of the things that are on the plan. One of those things is green retrofit. So reducing the amount of energy that is being used in homes and buildings. And I know that Reep Green already provides some of that service within Kitchener and perhaps extending into Waterloo. I can't remember if that was true. And so that will reduce the amount of energy being consumed. And we can then transition to figuring out what type of energy we're using. So we're trying to phase out carbon fuels, such as natural gas. And that would mean electrifying a lot of our public transit, electrifying our energy. So we have some clean sources of energy like solar power, wind power that we would be relying on more and building capacity towards that, as well as heat pumps as a way to transition away from natural gas towards a more carbon-free way of heating homes. So that's really one of the main ways that we're going to achieve that bold target. Another way is to increase capacity for public transit, because if there's more capacity for public transit and creating communities that are connected, 15-minute communities where you can access all the important services within a 15-minute commutable distance, like walking or taking public transit or biking, then there is less dependency on cars in the first place, which will help us transition away from carbon emissions towards more connection and more sustainability. And in addition to that, as we're transitioning, we also need cars. We will still need cars. And so there is a plan to increase manufacturing and accessibility of electric vehicles within Ontario and make it more affordable for folks to also access.
Okay, how will your party meet the target of protecting 30% of Ontario's lands and waters by 2030, in keeping with Canada's international commitments?
That's a great question too, because Mike Schreiner did recently talk about how the plan is not just to protect the green belt, which is quite a big mass of Ontario. It provides a lot of environmental services, including flood prevention. This protection is going to extend to the blue belt, which is a certain amount of kilometers around the green belt. And this is really the watershed. All the water that comes into the green belt, it has to come from somewhere, right? So the source protection of those water sources and how they infiltrate into our groundwater, because we need to protect our groundwater and allow it to be replenished, because a lot of folks do rely on groundwater as drinking water, especially in Waterloo Region. And so that is one of the ways that we'll be protecting a majority of our green spaces. Another is really to rethink how we transit. How do we use transportation? if we're putting more emphasis on public transit and providing the capacity for public transit, not just within cities, but also between cities, then we don't have to rely as much on highways. And so we can reduce the amount of highway construction. In fact, maybe even go towards reducing highways in the future, maybe not in 4 years, but perhaps in maybe 20 years. It's an ambitious goal, but that would be another way to not just protect, but then to restore.
Okay. What will you do to address the need for mixed multi-use housing and walkable communities, and that new home construction is done sustainably and affordably?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's, I think, top of mind for a lot of people right now, given the housing concerns. So one of the things that is in the Green Party vision for housing is finding that missing middle. There's a lot of area within urban boundaries that could be developed into triplexes, duplexes, walk-up apartments. So figuring out where those potentials exist. A lot of the barriers towards that are municipal zoning laws or bylaws. And so the province would make it easier for those zoning laws to be changed for housing, for triplexes, duplexes, and walk-up apartments, so that we can increase the density, but still keep it not having super skyscrapers around. Like you still have that community feel within the urban boundaries. And again, we'll refer back to that 15-minute community, making sure that services, essential services like healthcare, education, groceries, are all within a 15-minute distance of like biking, walking, or transit for most neighborhoods, so that there's a less dependence on cars. And then there's just also more connectivity between folks who live in that area, because then you see more people walking, you see more people biking, and it creates a different kind of culture, a more connected and sustainable culture.
Now, you've touched on this a bit already, but how will you support sustainable transportation choices with less car dependency and better active transportation and public transit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a great question, and that will require some partnerships from the municipal level, regional level, and provincial level, since a lot of these cross jurisdictions. But one of the main things is really to increase capacity for public transit and make it more affordable for folks to access public transit. Because if it costs a lot to use public transit, or if it takes too long to use public transit, people will prefer to use a car. So kind of finding those barriers that are not allowing people to use public transit, or that are hindering people from biking from one place to another, and then addressing those. So these will be, yes, you can do some things provincially, but these will really have to be in partnership with different municipalities to figure out what solutions are best in different municipalities, and then work towards a standard of practice, with each municipality having their own vision for their own roads.
How will your party protect farmland and address the negative ecological effects of aggregate extraction?
Yeah, so that's a really good one, because there's just so much interconnectedness when it comes to the need for housing and development and the need for agriculture. So it's important that we do protect agricultural land, because if we did develop it, then the food prices would increase, the distance from food to plate would increase, which would also contribute negatively to the climate change. So one of the ways to do that is to really build within urban boundaries and hold the line between urban and rural or agricultural land, to really put that emphasis on the fact that agricultural land cannot be gotten back once it has been developed. So there does need to be a lot more support also provided to agricultural industry with regards to infrastructure as well as broadband, because agriculture is in itself a very growing industry. And a lot of folks don't quite realize that there's a lot of different opportunities within agriculture to pursue different careers like lawyer or engineer, or it's not just farming. So there's a lot more there in terms of skills trades and professional careers that we would want to highlight. And that way we can protect farmland and grow it as an industry, making it easier for folks in Ontario to choose Ontario-based products. With regards to aggregates, our groundwater is very precious, and it's really important that we protect it. Any contamination to the groundwater can cause massive repercussions, as was seen in Elmira. So in terms of that, it's really important to put in strict permitting procedures to make sure that there's only a certain amount of water or a certain amount of development that can happen, and to not just provide development just for the sake of development. I think there's already sufficient aggregate around. There's a lot that is being byproduct, or there's a lot of constructions that are being demolished. And we need to find ways of reusing aggregates rather than mining new ones or extracting new ones. So more of a circular economy approach rather than an extractive approach.
Okay, this is the final question. BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and women are disproportionately exposed to environmental hazards such as landfills and industrial pollution. How will you address this environmental injustice? Yeah,
so this one is a big one. I recently in March attended a webinar for World Water Day where I got to hear Ingrid Waldron talk a lot about her work in Nova Scotia, looking at those injustices for Black folks and Indigenous folks in Nova Scotia, and it happens across Canada. I teach about environmental impact assessments at the university, and I know that there have been a lot of changes federally to the impact assessment and provincially to the impact assessment. Provincially, it has gone in a less strict manner to allow for more development. There needs to be a turn back to more progressive environmental impact assessment where we do look at the social impact and we do gender-based analyses before any development can be given that green light. So that is one of the things. I'm actually not sure if it is in the Green Party platform, but I am well aware of these policies, having taught them at the university level. And I know that that's one change that does need to happen, is more strict environmental impact assessment policy that really integrates the social impact and looks at gender-based and racial-based analyses before developments can go in. However, that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is really to continue consultation, or to start consultation if there hasn't already been consultation, because the people who are affected by it are the ones whose voices are not heard. So to partner with the folks that are advocating, who are most affected by these developments, and then to see what they have heard and what they think would be the best path forward. So it's important to bring in experts to help us guide a better way forward in those sense. We don't necessarily have to have all the answers. I think a lot of people in Ontario are working really hard in different aspects of things. And I think that as politicians, we really need to start listening to advocacy groups because they are representative of a lot of voices, and politics and politicians are supposed to be representative of their constituency, which means people. So really to understand what's happening to our people and how we can help them better, there are a lot of advocacy groups and non-governmental organizations that we need to partner with who already have data and who already know what are some recommendations, policy level, that we can implement.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm sorry for rambling a lot.
No, but that's what this is, a platform.
Okay.
I want you to speak your mind.
That's great. I hope that everyone enjoys listening to my responses. I care very deeply about all of these, and that's why I have chosen to run. And I really enjoy these conversations, even if they are interviews. I still really enjoy them.